This season is not a lost one for the Chicago Sky. I'm Stephen PridGeon-Garner here, coming to you on a little trending pod, talking about some things that are relevant to the Chicago Sky relative to this season in particular. And let's go ahead and just jump headfirst right into it. And I'll go ahead and say that though things have swiftly and kind of almost avalanche fashion shifted in a different direction for the team this season, that doesn't mean that the season in its entirety is a lost one for the Chicago Sky. And what I mean by that is you have a lot of newness around the team compared from last season to this season. Obviously, most pressingly, you have a brand new head coach, brand new coaching staff in general. That's going to come with the process. That's going to come with patience. And I think that's something that I tried to preach to people early in the season because there was naturally a team with Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso on it, and you bring back Courtney Vandersloot, and then you make a move for Ariel Atkins. It's going to come with expectations, and because of the injury adversity hits that the team has taken on in multiple respects over the course of the season, I think that more than almost anything else kind of intel for me that, okay, maybe this is a season that for someone that predicted that they would potentially make the playoffs this season, that might not necessarily be in the cards for them. There's a lot of factors that go into that. I start first with the injury adversity because if you're planning your season around a specific roster or a specific faction of the roster simply being available and it's just not in multiple capacities, that's going to make navigating that regular season that much tougher. And for a season that has as much parity as any season in the W has, a record season in terms of amount of games played, moving the schedule volume up to 44 games for each team, that makes it that much harder to navigate. The margin for error coming into the season already wasn't that much of a capacity that you could bank on maybe missing a game or two or three or four and potentially expecting to be able to make up for it in ways that you might potentially have been able to in seasons past with the W. So just generally speaking, from a process perspective, this is not a lost one. And we're diving into the reasons why I believe that. And a lot of it is stemming from watching the games, rewatching the games, looking at the individual growth, looking at the team growth that is taking place, and ultimately how those things are piecing together a vision for what it is that they're working towards. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that you can take away from this season is that there's a clear-cut avenue towards what they're working towards. And naturally, that's a lot of that directly aligns with the growth individually and in tandem of the skyscrapers. Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso, Angel Reese, whichever way you want to kind of layer the two together, they're solely and they're directly involved in everything that is this team's trajectory. And because of the individual growths and tandem growths that both of those two have taken on this season, this is why it's not a lost season. If you're taking a season where you're looking at what they had for a template for success last season, you're rapidly evolving that process as well as improving the process independent of them and around them to put them in their best positions while also finding ways to continue to thrust forth their individual skill development to make them more impactful, make them more dynamic. Those are all wins. Those are all wins. So that's what we're here to kind of look at. And we'll go ahead and get our first video of this trending pod queued up. Looking at Tyler Marsh speaking with me prior to yesterday's game or Thursday's game by the time, if some of you might not see it the very day after, but Thursday's game against the Phoenix Mercury, speaking with me pregame about the growth of their bigs passing and why it's been so integral for their team.
23 assists for your team on average over the last 4 games. Y'all have been preaching to move it all season long. It feels like the buy-in is starting to hit in terms of figuring out how to do it. Within all of that is a lot of Angel and Camila passing to each other as well as their teammates. Can you speak to how those two, as playmaking hubs for your team, kind of unlock things?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think that the spacing for us has been really good over the last few games, which has contributed to our ability to move the ball. We're not kind of jam-packed on top of each other, and so when we're willing and able to cut and respace and maintain that spacing, when we're able to find pockets within the defense to get it to our bigs, whether it's on short rolls or deep rolls, and then collapsing the defense in the paint and kicking out. Like, that's kind of what we've been able to be really good at over the last few games. And I think that, again, I spoke all season, our bigs have been great all year long at facilitating, and it's just been about our ability to get it to them in spaces where they're able to create for each other. I think that the tandem that Angel and Camila have had, or Angel and Elizabeth, or Elizabeth and Camila have had, they've really been in sync with each other this later half of the season, I think, and for most of the season. And so I think that we've found somewhat of a consistency over the last few games in terms of how to play off of each other. It's allowed us to contribute to those assists, and then it always helps when you're when you're converting off of that as well. So it's a lot of components to it.
So the piece where he's speaking to at the end of them learning how to play off of one another is very important, because though they were able to coexist last season, they didn't coexist in a way that felt like there was a process to it. It was more so, it felt more your turn, my turn, and at times they would kind of both be posting up at the same time. And that's just not something that's going to be conducive to winning in a sustained manner. And that's not going to be consistent to putting pressure on a defense, even more so in a sustained manner. It's felt a lot more systematic, and not in a robotic sense, but systematic in an understanding, a shared IQ, a shared vision, if you will, between Angel and Camila. Understanding that we have these sets that we're running through, and yes, they do have sets that they're actually running. When one gets the ball here, and when they get to the read and react portion of the set or actions that they might be running, the other understands what to do in relation. For example, I talked about it in a thread I did on Twitter earlier this week, looking at Camila Cardoso in the 5 games prior to Thursday's game against the Phoenix Mercury, and how she's grown as a playmaker. And I highlighted, obviously, Camila. If I'm saying it's about her, she's the main topic. But because she's such a willing and urgent passer, trusting what the pass does to a defense and how it pressures a defense, it naturally flowed into shining light on things that other players are doing to make that process work, which ultimately makes her a better playmaker, which ultimately makes Angel a better playmaker, and makes the team generally that much more of an effective type of offense comprehensively outside of one or two individual players. And it's been important to see that process play out again, because this is not something that was existent last season. You would get one possession or two on occasion where you see things working, and it's a light bulb moment, because that's what it could look like if you have principles established and the players are playing to those principles based off of the buy-in that I spoke with Tyler Marsh about in pregame on Thursday. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the individuals of it, talk about them in tandem with one another, and then we'll kind of get out of here for this episode. So first thing first here, we're going to be looking at assistant coach Courtney Paris, who was brought in to work specifically with Camila as well as Angel, just kind of working as bigs in an evolved sense. And with that in mind, I spoke with Courtney Paris prior to yesterday's game just about the way that the responsibilities and the demands on bigs for versatility has shifted over the last handful of years.
Yeah, the game has changed so much. I think it kind of always mirrors what the NBA is doing, and now the stretch 5 has become such a big thing. So bigs that can stretch the 4. I think if you don't do that, you have to be really great at what you do. And I think we have players on our team that are exceptional at what they do as they continue to build their outside game. So yeah, I think the game has grown so much, and players at a younger age, taller, bigger players, are learning more guard skills. They're getting more trainers. They're doing more things. And so the game is definitely evolving.
The game is indeed evolving, as Courtney Paris mentioned. And to that point, one of the biggest pieces in evolution relative to the Chicago Sky, we start with Camila Cardoso. So I spoke with Courtney Paris about what stands out to her and working with her and going through film and doing skill development with her. What stands out to her about Camila as a playmaker? And here's what she had to say.
I think the great thing about Mill is she's 6'7", but she's so mobile, and she's good on the move. Like, she's able to pass the ball, she's able to have the footwork and do the things on the move, which is really hard for bigger players, especially 6'7" players. But that makes her really dynamic because she can get into things fast. She just plays with the pace. She has the skill level to do it. She has such great hands. She can catch on the move. She can pass on the move. She's just so mobile.
With Camila as well, just from my viewing of her, the anticipation on some of the passes she makes really stands out. Is that something that's developable skill-wise, or is that something that players are just innately baked with?
I think one of the things about her, I think one, you have that skill, like she innately just has it. Not everybody can do that. Even if you want to do it, you can't. But also she's just so unselfish. She wants to get her teammates involved. She sees the action. She knows what they can do, and she wants to get it to them. So part of that is just her willingness to be a great passer. It's not a black hole when it goes to her. She's looking to get her teammates involved.
So with Camila in mind, if you put what Courtney was mentioning in tandem with everything that we heard from Tyler Marsh, talking about their spacing improving, talking about their re-spacing improving, talking about their cutting improving, all those things are very much principle-based. And once you get past the point where your principles are working to be established, now they're kind of happening at a more rapid cadence that puts pressure on the defense. The quicker you're making these decisions in succession with one another, the easier it is to create advantages and then ultimately put your bigs in positions where they're at their best as playmaking hubs for your team to execute on whatever advantage it is that the team is creating in the half court. That part is important, especially with Camila, because all of these things weren't consistently there, nor was the usage type that she's getting this season in last season in her rookie campaign. It was more so her doing more traditional big things. And as Tyler Marsh has mentioned multiple times, she's so far removed from being a traditional big. She has those skill sets at her foundation, but she also has a ton of other different things in different ways that she can put pressure on the defense that they wouldn't be doing her a justice or the team a justice if they weren't putting her in those spots. And he talked a lot about, in particular, Miller working off of short rolls as well as deep rolls and being able to pressure the defense in those ways, understanding where her teammates are off of that and delivering on what she sees. Again, I talked about all of these things with Camila in a thread that I posted on Twitter. I think it was on Monday or Tuesday of this past week. So you want to go ahead and go over there and check that out. Broke down about 15 or 16 some odd clips of her making plays and making passes. Not always directly resulting in an assist, but the ways that she's creating rotations for her teammates to then play off of. Again, it just really speaks to where she is with her growth as an evolved big, where her teammates are in principle and understanding how to create advantages around her and put themselves in position to potentially score. And then the other half of the skyscraper dynamic also comes into play with Angel Reese. So I talked with Courtney Paris about what stands out to her about having worked this season with Angel Reese and went through film and things like that. Here's what Courtney Paris had to say about Angel Reese.
And then for the other half of the skyscrapers, as they call them with Angel, when you see her playmaking, obviously initiating more pick and roll, grabbing goals, dribble handoffs, what about her playmaking to the 4 position is unique by your eye?
Well, I think it's funny because this year she's kind of being like, not exactly AT for you guys, but she's a little bit of an AT for us, like where she's had to handle the ball, bring it up, and that where she's so good at getting downhill. I think last year when I was scouting against her in Dallas, I was like, she can get downhill so well, and now she's turned that into getting downhill and finding others and be able to spray that ball out or hit the other post players in the dump off. So that's where she's really talented.
So relative to Angel, last season, it was very clear that she was more than capable of putting the ball on the deck. The issue was last season, process-wise, principle-wise, their offense wasn't built to be conducive to creating space for Angel to get to one of her strengths, which is putting the ball on the ground, being able to beat her matchup one-on-one, and kind of playing off of the paint touch from there, whether she be scoring for herself or she's probing to engage or attract the attention of other defenders and then passing out, whether it be kickouts or hitting her the bigs that are sharing the front court with her on dump off passes and backdoor passes and things like that. Again, you can't get to these portions and these kind of elements of skill development if the principles and things that are needed to be done on the periphery, on the outside of the individual players with the ball in their hands most, if those things are being done consistently. And to kind of round things out, I want to speak to that point. So if we're looking at Angel and Camila, they love to get into high-low situations. I think that's something that's at the top of every scouting report when you go against this team, that they do a good job of the presentation part as far as what actions they're getting into prior to it. And honestly, probably half of the time, it's not even an action that they're getting into. It's more so, okay, we're trying to run this on the strong side. The other big is in the opposite dunker spot or the opposite slot area of the floor. Play breaks down. It gets to one of the two bigs on the short roll or on the mid roll around the free throw line. And the other simply finds opportunity for a duck in, whether it's for a seal or whether it's for a pin in where they pin the defensive player on the top side and they have the leverage underneath closer to the basket for the other to make that high-low pass. That's great in process. But it's equally as important is what are you doing to hold the attention of the defenders around that, to make sure that someone can't just slide underneath and help and kind of duck under as that pass is on the flight to the recipient and ultimately intercept it or deflect it and just generally mess up the advantage that you've created. Respacing and cutting. In the thread that I did for Camila earlier this week and in threads that I've done for Angel earlier this week and generally posting clips during the game, I've continued to give flowers to Kia Nurse, Rebecca Allen, Rachel Banham, Michaela Onyenwere, Elizabeth Williams, Courtney Vandersloot when she was on the floor, because they all understand that it's not just about creating an advantage, because defenses can always work to get back out of disadvantage and to neutralize the advantages that an offense is creating. The little things they do on the periphery, emptying the deep corner and getting up to the slot area or the wing area of the floor so that when that entry pass to the post happens, there's no help, there's no turbulence that can break up the opportunity for those players to receive it and get into that advantage. Little things like that. Whenever they're getting the ball on the short roll, the opposite big, if they're in the same side dunker spot or if they're in different situations along the baseline, waiting for them to probe and attract the attention of the person that's guarding the cutter, and then the cutter promptly cutting around or behind that player that's being engaged by the person with the ball. And that either create an opportunity for the person with the ball to score because that help has to move, or if that help is not aware of where their original matchup is, allowing for opportunities for dump-off passes and backdoor passes, and just generally putting pressure on the defense to where it's either coming and scoring opportunities for them in the paint, or because of the paint presences that they have, it collapses the defense. They end up bringing another defender to be involved in the action, and it ultimately results in someone getting a wide open catch and shoot three-point opportunity. And when you have players that have been hot in streaks like Rebecca Allen has been for the team, like Courtney Vandersloot was early in the season, but Rachel Banham has been for the middle portion, and now late in the season, Kia Nurse is coming on as one of the best three-point shooters in the W over the last 2 weeks. Those are the things in process that are sustainable. They just didn't have those outlets and those avenues of putting pressure on the defense consistently in that way, in an organized fashion, but also being able to execute off of that in ways that aren't just a one specific result that you're getting whenever you do action X or action Y happens and read and react. They're a lot more involved in their process, and because of those things is why I don't feel like this season is lost. But you can let us know what you think in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk some basketball. And I'll kind of meet you all over there, as well as see you all on our next CSGO Sky podcast coming to you all around midweek next week. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for your time. Again, I'm your host, Stephen PridGeon-Garner. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen PG3, STEPHENPG3. You can also make sure while you're there to follow us on Twitter as well at the CSGO_Sky. Account, and you can also make sure to subscribe here to CSGO Sports on YouTube so you can be updated with notifications on whenever we do mini pods like this one or we do our actual live show. So make sure you continue to tap in with us. We acknowledge and appreciate all of you all. Be safe over the holiday weekend. Take care and talk to you guys soon.